I leave the introductions of the speakers to the moderator, and it's my, joy to introduce my colleague or former colleague, Parimala Kulkarni, teaches in the Department of English, Osmania University, and she is currently the professor, of course, and currently chairperson, Board of Studies at Osmania University, Department of English. Her areas of research is women's writing, and her other research interests include Indian literature, gender studies, cultural studies, and English language pedagogy in India. She received the UGC Research Award in 2014-16, and this session is on children's writing, and I now hand it over to Parimala Kulkarni to conduct the session, with a reminder that this is a 50-minute session, and after 40 minutes we will open it up for audience questions. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you sir for that introduction, and good afternoon ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to have two beautiful writers for children with us today, and I'm very happy to be moderating this session. Coming to the history of children's writing in Indian languages, it can be traced back to ancient times, but Indian children's writing in English is relatively new. And however, in recent times, India has seen a massive proliferation of children's writing in English, and we have two authors here with us who are contributing immensely to this growing and vibrant scene of writing for children. So it's a pleasure to welcome the panelists, Shobha, Tharoor, Srinivasan, and Savie, Karnel. Welcome to this session. Now let me very quickly introduce the panelists for the benefit of those in the audience who have not read their profiles. Shobha Tharoor Srinivasan is the author of a dozen works, both fiction as well as non-fiction. She is also a voiceover artist and a professional, and in the year 2022, she won the 68 National Film Awards in India for Best Narration for the film Rhapsody of Rains, Monsoons of Kerala. Her writing has been included in several anthologies and school curricula. She is also a former non-profit development professional who spent 2 decades as an advocate and fundraiser for persons with disabilities. So welcome Shobha ji, I'm very happy. Next, let me introduce our young second panelist, Savie Karnel. Savie started her career as a journalist before she started writing for children. And The Nameless God, published in 2021, her first book was very popular and was very critically acclaimed. And this was also shortlisted in the same year for the Bangalore Literature Festival Book Prize. It was the only children's book shortlisted for the Mumbai Film Festival's Words to Screen Options Market in 2023. Lakshmi Panda, the story of Netaji's youngest spy, is her second book, published in 2024. I'm sure this is also extremely good material for a very good thriller, right? So with that, from now I'll keep my talking to the minimum because I would like to hear them both speak. But I have heard people saying children's writing in a very kind of, casual manner, but Subhadra Sen Gupta, the winner of Sahitya Academy's 2015 Bala Sahitya Puraskar, has said, I take children very seriously. And I'm sure they all do that. That's why they're writing for children. So children writing is certainly no child's play, as the session is called, right? So first let me ask a common question to both of you. I would like you to just talk about how easy or how difficult it is to write for children. How different is it, right? And while writing children's books, what are the criteria that you have in mind when you decide to write? And also, I would like you to respond to the question, should there be a purpose while writing for children, is something that I would like you to begin with. So, Shobha, can we begin with you first? You'll have to turn it on, yeah.
Hello, can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. It's a delight to be here. Thank you so much. you certainly thought that it was important to discover why children's writing is not child's play. I'm so very fortunate to be able to occupy this space, to be able to write for children, because what children read today in many ways inform what they will be as adults. And if anything, I think children's writing has taken on even more meaning, more value these days, because it gives us in a sort of, in this difficult, cynical world, wherever you are in the world, it doesn't have to be in India, idea for hope, because children bring hope, they bring questions, and children's books answer those questions. Sometimes they create the questions. It's an opportunity for us to still have wonder when you read a children's book. It is an opportunity when we as adults read children's books or write children's books to still think about growth, development, imagination, all these wonderful things that are so easy to ignore in today's difficult world. You asked a question, do children's books have purpose? Absolutely. And I've written across the genre of children's books. I have picture books, which, on one level people suggest that the picture books are essentially for non-readers, that they're essentially illustrated books and they're probably very simple. And I always say that the one big thing about children's books is that at every age we bring something different to the reading of the book. And so as a picture book, even if it is written in rhyme or in simple words, a picture book cannot be more than 1,000 words, usually no more than 32 pages. So it has particular rules and it needs to be illustrated at every page. But at every stage, in the beginning, the children are exposed to the phonics when they hear the sounds of the words, and they are learning the story through the illustrations. When they're older, they come back and the cadence of the rhythm teaches them again language, they build their vocabularies. At a later stage still, they are learning and discovering new subjects. By reading children's books, they're exposing themselves to the world. So I could go on forever in many ways. When you read a book that's a collection of stories, you discover so often, even in a retelling of our Panchatantra or our folk tales, that the world is so connected, that we're all part of a shared planet, that the origin myths that were written in India are so similar to the origin myths in other parts of the world. When I was researching a Japanese story, for instance, in a retelling collection, I found that the story in the story of Ison Boshi was a story that I had read as a child in Don Tam, and that my children read as Thumbelina. 3 different parts of the world, and we had similar stories. So as our moderator said, we're all storytellers. By telling stories, we make connections. Children as well see themselves in the stories they read. So for all these many reasons, children's writing is important.
Thank you, Shobha. Can you respond, Savie?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and thankful for HLF for giving this stage to children's literature. Because as we know, children's books are important because they are the ones who develop reading habits. Because today's children are tomorrow's adult readers. If we do not promote children's reading or children's books, then we may not have an audience for the general sessions as well. But as you ask how difficult it is to write for children, well, it is not easy, I would say. Not very difficult, but it is certainly not easy. Because you see that I'm an adult. But I feel that when I write for children, I have to write in a way that children can relate to. I feel stories are very important for children and characters. And I need to have built characters which are relatable to children. And my experiences may differ from the experiences that children have. Well, there is an unequal communication level between adults and children. So when I sit to write, I basically write for children. So I have to lose my adult self and become a child again. So that I think so I think what a child may think in a certain situation, or what a child may feel in a certain situation. And this is certainly not very easy. Yeah, I have to step back maybe into my memories or be open to learn about the experiences of children. So I would say certainly not easy. And you said, is there a purpose? Well, I think there is certainly a purpose. Because stories give hope, stories build imagination, and stories create thinkers. And that is what we require. We require children to grow into adults who think. And that is the purpose of writing books for children.
Thank you, Savie, so much. Yeah, I agree with both of you that there is a purpose when we are writing for children. We have different purposes, we think in different ways, but definitely we have something in mind. Would you like to add something more?
Yeah, I just was going to say the themes one chooses as well. Children's literature is really a platform for us to talk about all kinds of issues. So even in a little picture book, for instance, like I wrote a book called Parvati the Elephant's Very Important Day, which is a little rhyming picture book that introduces the temple traditions, the costumes, the color, the pageantry, the percussion, the instruments of a temple. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity to talk about the fact that animals are becoming extinct, that usually only male tuskers carry the notion of animal cruelty. So each book is a springboard for conversation, and depending on whose hands they're in, very often a picture book is curated by a librarian or a parent. It's an opportunity for a lot of conversation and discussion. So there is, as you said, the purpose is that each book is an opportunity for a particular kind of understanding. We can discuss diversity, like I did in Sandalwood's story. We can talk this. When somebody said, are all children's books political? I don't know, all children's books are political, but there is always the opportunity to discuss other issues in anything you write. So all of us, including Savie and me, I'm sure, take our responsibility very seriously.
Yes, it's indeed very important because writing for children is more responsible than even writing for adults. At least that's how I look at it.
And I would like to add that the other challenge with writing for children is that we have multiple readers. Our readers may not entirely be children, but it's also the parents who may read them as a bedside story, or also adults who love children's literature. So you have a huge audience when you write for children, and you need to be mindful about it when you write.
And children's books come back to again and again. That's something I always say. I remember my teenage years reading lots of James Hadley Chase because it was quick reading and you solved the mystery. But once the mystery is solved, why would I go back to read a book that was not so literary? You don't really go back to learn anything new from it. You've read the book, the story is solved. You read a children's book, at every stage you're discovering something new. Even a picture book with the fun facts, or even the Raja Ravi Verma book, you go back and you want to discover further from it. So it's a platform from which you can build.
Definitely, because we can read children's books from different perspectives at different age. For example, we have our doctoral students working on children's literature. So they are looking at it from a very critical point of view. So as you said, agree that there are different readers, not just children who read these books. Thank you very much for that. I just have a very small question. Do you have any pressure from the publishers or any market demands that you keep in mind while you decide to choose some topic?
I don't know if my marketing person is here. It is true that it's not pressures necessarily. I feel that I'm able to answer most of the books that they want. I'm able to provide it for them. But it is true that sometimes there is that notion that the books, the stories should be short, or the pictures should be particularly vivid, even if I'm not the illustrator, or that there should be a lot of classical retelling. One of the requests that I had, which is these two books that you have here, was a particular request from the publishers asking for a retelling of our old classics. Because in the classics, we have the archetypal, we have archetypes that are being lost today. And by retelling these classical stories, children get a chance to learn about very basic, archetypical, notions of good, evil, bad, adventures that are simple. And they think there is value for that. So, of course, as a writer, you have the license of doing it the way you want. And so I brought in folk tales from different parts of the world. I brought in Karnel from Kerala, which is my home state, even though I never grew up there. I brought in Tennali Raman, you know, the sort of stories, not just the Panchatantra and the Jatakatiyans, etc. And then I added some more stories of my own, say, one world, many stories, one world, that we have the same stories cropping up in different avatars in different parts of the world, showing us once again that we're all connected in so many ways.
Shobha, I very much agree with that. Of course, we do have to think of certain things because after all, we want our books to be read. And therefore, we need to, as you said, we can do a lot even within the kind of quote-unquote demand or market. What about you?
Well, I haven't been under any pressure as such, but there have been certain demand, as Shobha mentioned. Like both my books are quite unusual, especially my first book, My Dead with a Nameless God, is quite an unusual topic
for children
especially, where we speak of children creating God and we speak of secularism and communal rights. So, well, there was no change. I thought my publisher would be reluctant, but they were totally open to the idea, and in fact, they helped me develop the more. But the only demand she had was that perhaps the protagonist should be a bit older, maybe 13, 14-year-old, because children in middle grades, they like to read about children who are older than them. But that would not work for the story, because I cannot expect a 14-year-old to think of creating a god and be imaginative. But that would certainly work with a 10 or 11-year-old. And then, the publisher agreed with it, the editor agreed with it, and we stayed on with keeping the age to 10-year-old. There was changes that were asked, but I've never been under pressure as such. Like with Lakshmi Panda is again unusual, but in fact, there were changes, and they asked her to bring in some action, some adventure, which I have to put in later. No, but there were deadlines,
yes,
which I missed.
After all, from publisher point of view, they have to say. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
One
understands.
It's a competitive market, and there's many people working in the children's space.
Yes. So now I come to one question to Shobhaji. So I was looking at the number of books that you have, and what struck me was all the titles of your books are very musical, and in fact they're alliterative. I'll just read a few of them. Sandalwood Story, Look Before You Leap, A Treasure Trove of Timeless Tales, Prince with a Paintbrush, How Many Lines in a Limerick, Time to Rhyme. So you seem to have a love for the language, which I'm sure you bring it. And what is the kind of, perhaps, maybe you could talk about this aspect of how you...
Yeah. That is true, I do have a love for the language. I love words ever since I was a little girl. But I grew up in a generation where we didn't have all the distractions that children have today. Most of my entertainment was reading. We played a lot of word games. We wrote stories, we wrote poems as entertainment. We played big games where we wrote a big word on the paper, and then my sister and I would try to make small words out of that and erase the ones that were in common and count the points. So words were part of our life. But as a voiceover talent as well, I've always liked the sound of words. And in the schools that I grew up in, we did a lot of elocution. I was taught by Sister Tharoor to make sure that I sounded my N's and my T's. Anne met an ant, and the ant met Anne. Hello, said the ant. So, we loved words. We loved the sound of words, we loved writing words, we liked reading words. We used to, in schools, have vocabulary tests and all of that. So words were very important. And as a student of literature myself, I've studied and taught literature in college. I like alliteration, assonance, parts of speech, all of that is fun.
Yes, because I did notice that you bring out the beauty of language too when you're writing. That's really beautiful. And what is the age group that you have in mind, particularly for these when you wrote Look Before You Leap and Timeless Tales?
I think ultimately that's something that I have a problem with when I have to lock a story into an age group. And especially in America, it's a problem because they need you to lock your book into, is this reading age 4 to 8, is this reading age, I had children who read advanced. I knew people who could read higher level books. Even the picture books. Parvati the Elephant is a picture book. A picture book has illustrations on every page. It is technically for non-readers, but it has so many words. It has a glossary. It has a lot of descriptions. Because what I say is, as Savie pointed out, our books are read by so many people, not just by the children. They're also read by the parents who read to the children. So we can't just have very, very simple concepts. The book has many layers that you can pick from. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but I can't really tell you what age group. The poetry books, it's marketed for ages 8+. But as I say, it's poems for kids of all ages. And I've had many adults come to say to me, to say how much they've enjoyed it. They wish they'd been introduced to these poetic poems when they were at school. So it's for all ages, really.
That's wonderful. I think now I would like to just come to Savie. Can you just talk about the journey of your writing for children? Because before this you were a journalist, I read. So can you just say a little bit about that?
I guess being a journalist was my first step towards becoming a writer. Because, yeah, I remember when I decided to be a journalist, see, I've always wanted to be a writer. And I think I was about 11 when I thought that I could write. Because I grew up in a town called Karnel, and it was being promoted for tourism. And they said that Rabindranath Tagore wrote his first ever play on those beaches. And somehow this information made me feel that, I too could be a writer just because I shared the same space maybe many years later. And so when I decided to be a journalist, I rationalized saying that I would have many experiences and maybe I would be meeting new people every day. And all these experiences perhaps would one day help me write. And I've loved reading children's books. And yeah, I think even when I became an adult, I read children's books. And and that was it. And somehow, I guess, automatically, the first book I attempted to write was again a children's book. So, and that's how I came to writing. And again, when you see the debut, The Name is God, it has many experiences from my journalism days, wherein I wrote about riots and communal violence. So I've taken these experiences, I've carried those experiences into writing my book. Even my second book, Lakshmi Panda, I first heard of Lakshmi Panda when I was a journalist. My grandson came to me to tell her story. So I think both of my books have come from my journalism experiences.
Yeah. Coming to that you talked about, Lakshmi Panda, the story of Netaji's youngest spy. I would like you to talk a little bit more about it, how you came to write about it. Because even when I read it first, the moment I heard Lakshmi Panda, Netaji's spy, I thought of Captain Lakshmi Sehgal. So this is a very different person. So can you just elaborate on that, please?
See, even I had never heard of Lakshmi Panda. And it was one evening, I was in my office, perhaps I was busy filing my story late, I was the only person there. And a young man came in lugging some files. And he was Lakshmi Panda's grandson, Prabhuraj Patro. So he was going to every newspaper office trying to tell his grandmother's story. Because Lakshmi was living in penury, she was in poverty, living and working as a domestic help in some houses. So he was, some pension had helped her. So I heard her story and I spoke to Lakshmi on the phone. And I wrote about it in the newspaper. And I was not the only one, many other people also wrote about it. And she had some help from social workers. And then the then President Pratibha Patil invited her to Rashtrapati Bhavan and conferred the Rashtriya Swatantrata Sainik Samman honor and promised her that her pension would be released. But just 2 weeks after that, Lakshmi Panda passed away. And when her grandson called me telling that, my heart broke. I felt she didn't get her due during her lifetime. And somehow then I thought that her story had to be told. I mean, not the story of the struggling old woman, but of the story of the young girl who defied all odds to join Netaji's army.
Lovely story.
Yeah, it's a lovely story and it's a gripping one, very moving one. And as I said, it will make a wonderful thriller. Right? I'm sure people should think of it. Even when I was reading it, I was holding my breath to see what comes next. It's that kind of a story. So I won't reveal much because I want the people to buy the book and read it. Right? Next I come to you, Shobhaji. I was very fascinated with something you have done in this book, where you have written lockdown stories in 100-word format. So I would like you to talk a little bit about it. How did you come to do this? And also perhaps read a story for us also. Yeah.
In the treasure trove of timeless tales, I was asked by the publisher to do a retelling of stories. And as I shared before, I added in stories from different cultures as well as from our own South Indian tradition and others, rather than just the Panchatantra and the Jataka tales or Aesop's fables. I thought I would add in a little section because I feel that every opportunity when I'm sharing stories, this is just my nature, I want children to be able to pick up and feel themselves as writers. And there's something called flash fiction. This isn't exactly that, but there are many ways of writing stories. You can write 64-word stories, they're called cestudes. You can write 100-word stories, and they're just 100 words. So when we go into classrooms, I'll ask the children, if your story is 105, how will you make it 100? And then they'll say, take off 5 words. So I keep telling them that's too easy. What sort of 5 words are you removing? It's a way of sort of learning how to write using what they call mot jus, as Flaubert said, the perfect word. So if you can write a short story in 100 words, you're very judicious about the use of language and words. And kids actually end up having a really good time doing the exercise in class. So if you want, I can read you a story. You said you wanted me to read about...
yeah, I think it's
the perspective of a pet.
Perspective of a pet. So she has a story called The Perspective of a Pet.
About 10 100-word stories at the back. But I'll read you something called From the Perspective of a Pet. Obviously, it's a very short story. It's 100 words. So it may lack in some things, but it's supposed to be a complete story. This is called A Story from the Perspective of a Pet. I'm not sure why this happened, but both Mum and Dad are working from home these days. I'm not sure if they're working or are on holiday, but they are here indoors and they don't ever leave other than for walks. It started out as fun. I mean, who doesn't like being patted and cuddled? But they just won't leave me alone. At all. What happened to rest? Whenever they step out of the house, it's for exercise. And guess who's their favorite companion? I'll be honest, my aching legs are ready for them to return to work.
Wonderful. So it brings in the perspective of a pet too during the lockdown. We all had very different experiences, but the pet here is it is. Here I would like to just read out from Shobhaji's National Film Award Citation Certificate, which states that the experience of breathtaking visuals of the monsoon in Kerala is immensely enhanced by the wonderful and mellifluous voice of the narrator. That's why I wanted us to hear that voice, Shobhaji. And those who wish to listen to her more, please check out her website, where she has given links to the videos where her stories are performed and she has done the voice over. I'm sure we will all enjoy doing that. Thank you so much.
That's very sweet of you.
Now, can I come to Savie and also request you to read something from the book? It's up to you, because there are several situations where I was holding my breath, just like a small kid. So I would like you to read something from.
Is there a particular situation?
Sorry?
Is there any particular?
No, okay, because there are several there. Maybe somewhere she's catching the frogs, or perhaps in the enemy territory. There are so many, I can't name one. Right.
So here we have Lakshmi waiting outside the Rani of Jhansi gate for 3 whole days to be let in. But she doesn't meet any criteria, because they have to be about 18 years old and they have to have their parents' permission. But Lakshmi had lost her parents in the bombings during the Second World War. She was there with her 10-year-old brother Nakul. So after the third day, she decides to change her approach, and this is a small one-paragraph entry. I stayed up in the tree, waiting for signs of any new arrivals. Then, from distance, I spotted a black motor car heading our way. I quickly slid down the tree trunk and rushed to the middle of the road, just in time to come face to face with the car and wave to stop it. The guards at the gate shouted, "Get out, get off the road." I pretended not to hear and stood still. The car came to a screeching halt. I've always loved the sound of a screeching car. Screech. The driver, who was in iron uniform, immediately stepped out, absolutely fuming. "Have you lost your mind? What's wrong with you? If I hadn't managed to stop the car, do you know what would have happened?" If this had been a magical story like the ones Ma would tell us, arrows of fire would have shot out from his eyes, turning me into ashes. The driver was so angry that I wondered for a moment if he really was going to shoot arrows at me. But just then, I heard a strong yet calm voice. "The stunt that you pulled off would have got you killed."
Thank you sir, so much. In your introduction, you have talked about, how a lot of it is based on a certain exchange you had with Lakshmi Panda, but there's a lot of imagination. So can you just point out how much, at least what, some of the facts that, you have brought in the book, and what is fiction, what is fact?
So when I spoke to Lakshmi, she told me that she had joined the INA. She was part of the Rani of Jhansi regiment. And she mentioned about, that she was trained in sportsmanship, and all these things were also proven with documented facts to get her the freedom fighter pension. And in one of the conversations, she very casually mentioned that, I used to go in disguise and catch frogs and sell frogs, and this was my way to gain entry into British camps and gather information. So, and she said she was a spy, but she didn't make a big deal out of it. So all these are facts which are, which is the truth. But the only fiction part is more of her adventures, and about the conversations are fictionalized of what she must have felt, after losing her parents, and her relationship with the brother. I think she had a good relationship with the brother. He was a younger brother, and even when she was nearing her 80, she spoke of her brother and she waited for him. Because Nakul went missing during the war, and he never came back. So she kept telling me, I think he's somewhere and he's going to come to meet me. So and I had to bring this relationship in the book. But she didn't tell me what happened when they were children. So the part when they were children and the exchanges they are all fictionalized.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think we just have 2 minutes more, maybe before we open it up to the questions from the audience. But before that, I just want you to have your perhaps response to, we have Rudin Bishop from Ohio University, who uses the metaphor of mirrors, windows and sliding doors for the books. So mirrors, obviously their light is reflected, and windows, we can see it, the outside world through it, and sliding door is for them to enter. So in your experience of children's writing, do you think this is, your remarks?
That answer? Absolutely. I mean, I think even in America, for instance, it's very, very big, the notion that children should see themselves in the text they read, because that brings them in. I've anthropomorphized animals so that they have the same emotions as children. So children identify, and I can connect with the animals more easily. If Parvati, the elephant, is excited, it's an emotion that children feel. If she's tired, in that way you form a bond with animals. They're later going to be stewards of the planet, so it's important. Similarly, when I did the Prince with a paintbrush story, instead of writing a linear biography, which is just essentially dates and facts and illustrations. I wasn't sure if children would find that exciting enough, so I added a double narrative where the child doing the discovery of the artist is actually in the book. So we have comic bubbles where the child's thoughts are in the book. That made the book, distributed by children as a popular book. So you have to think of these ways. You have to create the mirrors as well as the sliding doors, as well as the windows. The windows so you learn something out beyond what you're familiar with. The mirrors so you see yourself in the stories, or you see people like you. And the sliding doors so you're open to the whole world, to recognize that everywhere in different parts of the world there are people like you, even if they seem unlike you. And even the poems can do that, which is something
yes,
like that.
definitely literature, it's applicable, but for children also it's very important. Thank you so much. What about you? Particularly in the context of both the Nameless God as well as Lakshmi Panda, how do you relate?
I think when I wrote The Nameless God, I was very aware that it is going to be a mirror of the society that we live in. What I looked around me, I would look around hatred being seeped into children. So that prompted me to write The Nameless God, where I felt we have to talk about friendships once again, and we have to talk that the beauty of India, of living together despite our differences. So this is certainly a mirror into the world and a window as well. I guess Lakshmi Panda, you can call it a window into the past of Lakshmi's life in the 1940s during the Second World War and her life in the INA. And of course, both the books are sliding doors, where I feel that readers can step into their world and feel what the characters feel, the experiences they have.
Yes, it's very important for ourselves to be reflected as well as to look into newer worlds as well as step into their world to kind of experience it. So definitely books help us do that, and it was really wonderful talking to you both. Now I think maybe we can open this for questions. Yeah. So can we have the questions? Yeah, there's a first hand there. Please, yeah, in that row, the first one. Please identify yourself and very quickly keep yourself to the point.
Hello, I'm Zaid. I'm currently working as a scriptwriter for developmental lead challenge children. The one problem I have seen in Indian education system is that we take children in a classroom and make them care about stuff that is not relevant to them until they are 5 to 6 academic things. I wanted to ask you that have you ever wondered or played with the idea of teaching curriculum through storybooks, children's storybooks, academic storybooks, but they are made in a way that they, in the mind, keeping in mind the children.
Is this addressed to me? When I go into classrooms, I always say, both to the teachers as well as to the children, that just as poetry, there's poetry in the classroom, or there's texts of the classroom, which do give us some foundations on structure, on meter, or on prose. It's very important to look at poetry of the playground as well, to be able to read outside of what we do in the classroom. Wasn't it Mark Twain or somebody who said, education is what you have outside the classroom? And so we can't afford to sort of minimize that. It's very important that children, instead of lamenting that they don't read, that we give them an opportunity to read the kind of things they're interested in. If a little boy says, I don't like books, I only like football, then read about football books, read about your favorite football hero. But you can continue to read, because in that reading activity, you're exposed to vocabulary, you're exposed to new ideas, to new cultural differences, to thoughts, to ways of structuring sentences. There's so many opportunities that come out of it. A lot of these stories, by the way, are being used in school. Many of my poems have been bought by educational, Macmillan and Orient Longman and things to be included in anthologies that go into school curriculum. Raja Ravi Verma was taught in class 6 in Brigade School in Bangalore. So, some of us are working in that space just to make it a little bit more interesting for children. I think I answered your question.
Yes, definitely. There was somebody else. Please address it to the person you wish.
Yeah. So, I am curating the Nanha Nukkad here at HLF. So I've been hearing a lot of stories, children's stories, meeting a lot of children's authors. So I'm also a writer. I write for children. I write poetry too. So my question is, this is for Shobha. So as a new writer, who's just starting to write or has written a lot, I have found in my personal experience it's very tough to get across to a publisher because a new name is something they don't want to, they feel that's a new name. We are more comfortable with, oh yeah, we know her, we know this. So how do you make that inroad into publishers?
Well, that's why they have literary agents these days. So if you can find an agent who believes in your work, I always say that first we have to believe in what we've written. I say that to the children as well. As Savie was very eloquently talking about her books, or some of us who talk about ours, if we're able to describe it, do what they call the elevator pitch. That is a very Western term. But if you can do an elevator pitch for your own work and talk to, now, in fact, there are quite a few agents in India. I can give you names of some of them. I did pitch directly to most of my publishers, but I have used an agent for a couple of my picture books, and it was done by accident. I met the person. She said she wanted to represent me. We started out with 1 or 2 books, so it can happen that way as well. But if you are not known in this particular field, it's useful to get that agent in the, to believe in what you're doing, and they'll open some doors for you. There are some publishers who have the agent's job is to have a relationship with all the publishers. So you're sort of skipping a few steps if you can go through an agent. Did I answer the question? Even getting to
an unheard name is something, you're not even able to reach someone who even look at your work.
No, but the agents are always looking to represent. They're always hoping that they're going to find that new bestseller or somebody like Anand Nilakantan whose work will become a screenplay for Netflix or something. So you never know. They are looking for new people. Yeah.
Any other questions? Please raise your hands. I think we are all mesmerized listening to you both. That we would perhaps go by.
When is the children somebody else?
Yes, please.
I'm a teacher. My question is for both of you. Both of you address this concern that the stories and the protagonists have to be relatable for the children. And when we teach literature to adults, we do not teach literature that is relatable. The purpose of literature is to teach the experience of others. This is the popular notion of how we understand literature. So how do we train children to understand the experience of other and not conditioning them to relate to the characters of the story?
Can I answer that? And then you can as well. Well, I think that even the literature in which the children don't see themselves, they recognize the emotions that they see, or they recognize some of the experiences, or they know what they don't like. So anything that's well written is evocative. It compels you to think about it, raises questions. If you have a good stimulating conversation in the classroom as a teacher about some of the things you've discovered in that book. When we read Shakespeare growing up, obviously we were not in that period. We loved the universal ideas that came through Shakespeare's text. The language was difficult, so the teachers guided us by talking to us about references to context. We studied, in India those days, we spent a whole year doing merchant events. You go somewhere else today, you'll do all of Shakespeare's tragedies in 12 weeks. You can't really understand it as well. So I think the system in which we are directed, or rather guided by the teachers to have those conversations makes the text come alive in wonderful ways. In fact, sometimes I always think when I'm reading a particularly difficult book by an adult that's won an award or something, I think, wouldn't it be fun to have this in a conversation to sort of understand what messages are left in other people's minds about the book. Children's books may be a little bit simpler in that sense to navigate, but they still raise important issues that you can discuss with them.
And I agree with Shobha. And I think first of all, we need to define what is relatable. And to me, relatable is that a children should feel with the emotions of the characters. Which it does not necessarily mean that the character should be in an urban setting or in an international school. But children, no matter where they are, they have the same emotions, they have the same feelings. And that is what we need to bring in our books. Like in both my books, one is set in the 90s. And the condition, the social environment is quite different. And the other is in the 1940s. But yet, what I attempt is that, that the reader should connect to the experience of the character. So that is relatable to me. I answered your question.
Yeah, I think we have one and there's one more here, so we have just time to take those two.
Hi ma'am, my name is Arya. I'm a literature student aspiring to become a teacher. I recently came across Shobha ma'am's The Great Indian Stories in Nati Sutra, where you work with Dr. Rajashree Varya. Your narration, I did a paper a few days back about how dance and storytelling can be inculcated together and the possibility it has in English language teaching. So can you share your insights about that?
That was a wonderful project that a producer had got in touch with me and said that he wanted me to use my voice to read aloud from the classics like Panchatantra. And he thought adding the visual component would make it more appealing to children, and he would market it as a video project. So they called it Great Indian Stories. I did a retelling of many stories from the classics and then read them aloud, in a slightly slow, to fit within 3 minutes or whatever, read them aloud. And we had this beautiful dancer called Rajashree Varya, who's very well known in Bharatanatyam. She did, in very simple, not in the traditional Bharatanatyam costume, she used mudras to tell the story. So we would do, whether it's a crow in the picture, it was basically the hand, the movement, and I thought it was a fabulous project. Unfortunately, I don't think it did very well in the market. People didn't buy the books or whatever. I did my project and left. But I think Great Indian Stories it's still there. I don't have propriety over it. I sold my writing and my voice to them, and they've taken it after that to make it into this dance video. I listed a few on my website just in case children want to buy them. It doesn't really benefit me in that sense. It's not my work other than my voice. But it's a very good project. So for those of you looking for a visual component to storytelling, it is there. It's just that we haven't done any more since then. I think there's probably at least 20-30 stories now.
Would you also like to respond to that? Because it was meant. Okay. We have one person here. I think this is the last question we have time for, and we conclude after that.
First of all, I'd like to thank you. This has been a very insightful session, and I really learned a lot sitting here. I'm also a children's author and a parent. I wanted to ask both of you, over the years you both have been writing for multiple years, have you seen a change in children's reading patterns, and do we have to, make a, change our game or do something different to, compete with the distractions that are there today? And promote more children's books, promote more reading as opposed to screens.
Well, I do have a book that I've written, which I call an interactive book, and it was a response to the fact that people are suggesting that children don't have the patience to read through something that's really long in terms of the text. So I wrote a book, again my passion, unless I believe in it, I can't write it. So it may not be the subject that appeals to everybody, but what I've done is to make the framing of the subject interesting to children. So this is a book on words, but I have games in it, I have poems in it, I have stories in it, I have vocabulary in it, I have poetry in it, and it's all in the book. And the idea is that, and it's coming out through HarperCollins, the idea is that children can read whichever page they want or play whichever game they want. They don't have to sit and read the book from start to finish in one sitting. So in some ways, this was a response to upping the game or changing the game I can't write about, I don't know how to write about some of the subjects that they played, those war games on video games. That's not my style, I don't have that in me. So I'm doing it by writing it differently so that children can go to it at different stages. Because it is true, we are living it. Children's writers are writing in a space that is highly sort of competitive and also competing with many more distractions. When I was growing up, children's books were the best thing ever, and so we didn't need to worry about it whether it was going to be read or not. Today we do have to worry about it because there's video games, there's TV, there's all these other smartphones with various applications and all of that. So you have to come up with new ways.
Yes, because I feel children's books are competing with video games and OTT, not just with other books. So you have to be very mindful. And I consciously write when I write each chapter, I leave it at a cliffhanger. I'm very conscious about it, and so that the child turns the page. And even when I'm writing, and after every page, I leave something. I leave something to be discovered. So that is the technique that I use in my books. And perhaps I have learned from the OTT series.
And also from Charles Dickens, who all of his books were written chapter by chapter because they were not published as books when he wrote them. They were done every week, they came out in an issue. And so each week you were waiting for the next chapter, and it sort of makes you have a reader because of that repetition, right?
Thank you very much. I'm sure there are questions and we would love to listen to them more. But it's time for us to conclude the session. I thank both of you, Shobhaji and Savie, for being here for a wonderful conversation. And also I thank the audience for being a very wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming out and supporting our work, reading our books, being here, asking questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.